Level Up is a regular podcast that brings you topics to help you perform at work and in life at your very highest level. Your host is Dan Chiodo, an executive coach, corporate trainer, and author. He is president of Impact Training and Executive Coaching. And now, here's Dan.
Thank you, Jesse. And to our audience, thank you for joining us for Level Up. If you watched our first episode this season, you see that it is the season of being. Our first one was Be Polite. Christy Spencer talked about the company she founded, The Polite Company. This is episode number 70, and it's entitled Be Bold. So today we feature a young professional, originally from Philadelphia. So first, a little background. Although he's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, he has lived in Taos, New Mexico for 10 years. My guest has a degree in culinary arts, which was a great slice in his life. And although that career was fun for him, he decided to enter the management world in the field of communications. And soon you will see he enjoys so many of life's greatest experiences. I'd like you to meet the circulation director of the award-winning Taos News. Please welcome my guest, Shawn Roberts. Hello, Shawn.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on as a guest is that it's just interesting when I've listened to you and your past and your present. It's very exciting, as well as I'm sure the future will be. And sometimes our viewers are people who are thinking about the careers they're in, wondering if they would ever make a change to something else. So I wanted them to have a chance to get to know you. So sometimes, we'll start here, sometimes we admire people because of experiences they've had or organizations they've been a part of. So you were part of an elite group. You are an Eagle Scout. And I know that goes way back, but would you tell us what that taught you?
Oh, of course. So actually, Boy Scouts is originally what brought me to New Mexico. When I was about 15, I came here on a high adventure backpacking trip, which really started my love for the outdoors. But I started in the Cub Scouts originally, so I've been in scouting my whole life and finally made it to Eagle Scout, which is the highest rank in all of the Boy Scouts. So it's a pretty large accomplishment for myself. I know only about 1% of all scouts actually become Eagle Scouts. So it really kind of helped me grow into a leadership role and a good disciplined lifestyle, actually.
That's wonderful. Is there anything you've faced in either of your careers so far that you can say was a little easier because of what you learned as an Eagle Scout?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it gave me a bunch of self-discipline as well as a lot of leadership traits. Just working in that realm for years and years and growing up there, and just physical and mental discipline has definitely helped me become who I am today.
That's good. Now, you also traveled in Australia for a while. Did you enjoy that, and what did you learn?
Oh, I loved living in Australia. I lived there for just over a year, right actually before I moved to Taos, New Mexico. I was working in a few restaurants over there, and I also did a program called WOOFing, which stands for Willing Workers on Organic Farms. And that really got me in touch with the local community of Australia, which actually got me more involved and into a whole culinary role as well as a farming and an exploration role. It really just blew my mind, that other side of the world.
Now, did you have your culinary arts degree when you were in Australia then? Or?
Yes, I did.
Okay, excellent.
It was right after I graduated from college is when I did it a little different than, say, a lot of people in Europe where they take a break before they go to university. I did it right after.
So what was it like working in some of those restaurants? That's incredibly interesting.
Oh, a completely different aspect than what I'm used to from working in restaurants in the United States. I mean, I got to work at the Sydney Opera House for a little bit on some catering, work with some really high level chefs, just gave me a whole new outlook and experience wise. I mean, especially just working and traveling, working with different local foods that I don't get to work with here and different types of meats and produce, just really expanded my love for cooking.
That's wonderful. And so when you came back to the United States, what were you really glad to be back to? Anything here that in the United States we have that you didn't find in Australia?
I would say the thing that I missed the most of the United States living over there personally was my family. It is hard being so far away from them, and working with the time change was pretty difficult. I mean, I was traveling on a very limited budget, so I was pretty much just working and traveling at the same time to continue traveling. But really coming back to the United States to see my family was my favorite part.
Yeah. Well, what about Australia? The things that maybe you really like that you can't find in the United States? Anything that really appealed to you there?
Oh, it sounds strange. The craziest thing that I know we don't have here is the public transportation. It made life so much easier. I mean, living here in Taos, New Mexico, it's very rural. We don't really have a lot of good public transportation. We have a small amount, but it's just such a breeze on that side of the world where they just make it so easy for everyone to get anywhere across the country.
Yeah. Makes traveling exciting, I think, too.
Oh, definitely.
Easier to do. Well, let's talk about culinary arts a little bit now. You say that changed your life. So how so?
I mean, so I started at a vocational high school. Just gave me a little bit of a different start to my career. I know a lot of my friends went on to college and they have these great degrees, but it kind of gave me some self-discipline there, as well as being in the Boy Scouts. I would cook a little bit growing up, but it really got me detailed and organized. So there was two aspects of that, from cooking, from just cooking opposed to baking, which in my opinion is more of a science. So working with that, you have a lot more of minute measurements and things that you really need to focus on, where cooking, you have a little bit more freedom and makes it more enjoyable. You can kind of go off of the recipe a little bit and get a little bit more distracted, but more creative at the same time. So those aspects really broaden my horizons to kind of open up to pretty much do anything.
That's excellent. Well, you're that way today. So that must be something that you do get from that creativity aspect. So now let's look at still the culinary arts and what came easy for you and then what was more difficult.
So the easiest part there for me, I would say, is just working within your crew or your staff. I mean, working in a restaurant, you have to be so disciplined, but you rely on every different aspect of the kitchen together. So we have realms from the prep area to the finished product, and we need a seamless transition to get everything on time. I'm sure you've been to restaurants where they have a couple hiccups there, and just having a good crew really makes a difference there. So that definitely helped me out. And that worked with me being in the Boy Scouts for so long too, just relying and being willing to trust on one another.
That's good. Anything that was particularly difficult for you, or did it all come pretty easily?
There was times where it was difficult. I mean, aspects make it easier and harder. Baking is always a challenge, especially now working with different elevations makes it tricky. So you have to really work on that aspect. But baking is probably one of the most difficult things I've done in my culinary career.
Okay. One thing too, as I've worked with some restaurants and other places, that it's deadline driven. Things have to be done a certain time. And tempers can flare up a little bit, personalities. Do you ever see that happen in a kitchen where you have to deal with a lot of people having their emotions in different ways?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you don't have a fluid group from the front of the house to the back of the house, it makes it very tricky. There needs to be good, timely manner, especially with like large groups is where you deal with that the most, in my opinion, is working with different aspects. And I mean, there's some people that'll get cold food or some people that'll get hot food, everything out at the same time. So really having a good timeline and discipline there makes a smooth transition, but it also can make it very difficult at the same time.
Yeah. Now, you've had a variety of experiences in the food industry, cooking, manufacturing, sales. Which one did you enjoy the best, and why is that?
I would say it's a combination, actually, between cooking and sales. Especially with working in manufacturing, the best thing to do is to really educate the consumers. And with that cooking background to a sales background, you have a little bit more, it's more passion driven on that realm. So it's not like I'm out there selling, say, used cars or something. You're selling something that you're passionate, that you put your time and your effort and your love into. So you have that whole background that you can portray to the consumer to really get them as excited about the product as you.
Excellent. Very good. Well, this is a perfect time for a break. I am Dan Chiodo, your host. My guest today is Shawn Roberts. You are watching Level Up, and we'll be right back after this.
Here is F45 training. The F stands for functional training, a mix of circuit and HIIT-style workouts geared towards everyday movement. 45 is the total amount of time for sweat-dripping and heart-pumping fun. With thousands of exercises in our database and an almost infinite amount of combinations, our sessions are always fresh and innovative. Put that all together, and F45 training is here to bring you one of the world's most innovative workouts. Now let's take a class. Find your local F45 studio from our locations all around the globe. Once inside, our trainers will be there to greet you and check you in. First, we'll demo each exercise while you watch from the blue track. A warm-up will follow, then it's time to find your station. Want to play-by-play? Track your heart rate with F45 Lionheart. Ready in 3, 2, 1, it's go time. F45 TV will guide you. F45 FM will move you. And our trainers will support you every step of the way. This is team training. This is life-changing. This is F45.
Thank you for being with us. We are talking to Shawn Roberts. He is a circulation director of the Taos News. This newspaper, by the way, has won the Weekly Newspaper of the Year award for the past 21 years. So how do you accomplish that? Well, I should make mention at this point that it's a lucky organization because they have a dynamic team of directors, a great owner, a great CEO, and this helps with that. Now, Shawn, let's talk about this big change in your life from what you were doing and your culinary life and what made you switch to a completely different field. Could you tell us about that?
Of course, yes. So I actually started at the Taos News last September, so I've been here for just over a year. A few different things that have happened on that realm. They were looking to fill a void here, and they wanted somebody that had a good leadership and a good willingness to work with others. And I was getting a little personally just burnt out from the sales world. It can be very difficult, and there is a good grind there, but I just thought there was a point in my current career path that there wasn't any more room for advancement there. And I knew that there's always opportunity for growth within the Taos News. So even if that is maybe going to a larger newspaper down the road, but just really taking all this information in and getting my feet wet here has really just broadened my horizons for this career.
That's excellent. And as I've gotten to know you, I noticed some great characteristics that you have. One is that you seem to be willing to take on anything. Am I right about that?
You are correct there, Dan. I mean, I don't really have an area where I feel like I can't succeed in. So any challenge is a new opportunity and new experience for me. And I'm willing to always take that on.
So sometimes it involves change. It sounds like you embrace change, do you?
Yes, definitely.
That's excellent. And some of these things that you're doing, they're all new. They're at first probably foreign to you in the newspaper world and how it's done. Does that ever scare you at all?
Yeah, definitely a few times, just with how demanding the newspaper is, especially with getting out a weekly publication, but having a great team behind us and have everybody in sync working together makes me breathe a little easier at night. There's always a few hiccups that come around, but for the most part, we can get there. And then as long as we get everything sent down and brought back on time and the community gets to read what we put out.
Yes. One of the things that I think is important for any organization is that you're always listening to the outside eyes, the people who don't work there, but they receive what you put out, the advertising, the news, whatever it is. And you kind of had outside eyes when you first came to the organization, not knowing that much about it, I would think. So does that help to have those outside eyes when you were examining things, looking at things?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I know we've had people that have worked at the paper and worked in certain departments for several years, and just always having a new set of eyes and somebody looking from like a higher ceiling kind of sees new opportunities or even new ways to do things that might have not been as easy in the past. Trying to look at streamlining certain situations definitely helps.
That's good. One hot day in New Mexico, you were out delivering bottles of water to your carriers who were selling newspaper on the streets. And I also heard you have donuts awaiting your carriers when they come to pick up their newspapers to sell in the community. So you really do care about people, don't you?
Oh, of course. If it wasn't for our local community, we wouldn't have the paper that we put out. I mean, we have street salesmen. We're one of the only areas in the country that still sells the paper on the streets, with the exception of a few others. But if it wasn't for those people, they account for about 50% of our weekly sales. So we want them to come back. We rely on them as much as they rely on us.
That's really important. And how important, you mentioned teamwork. You took it all the way back to Eagle Scouts or being an Eagle Scout, and also the food industry, and now here where you are, and leadership. Now you're in a leadership role. So how important is that teamwork mentality, do you think?
Oh, it's extremely important. If I didn't have the faith in my team to get everything done on a weekly basis, I don't think I could succeed as well as we currently do. I mean, I rely on my team as much as anybody else could. If it wasn't for them out there helping put in the paper, we cover all of Taos County, which is about 20,000 square miles. So if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to get the paper out and really engage in the community as well as we do.
Yeah. You always seem to have such a positive attitude, and sometimes leaders get bogged down in processes, deadlines, other challenges, but how do you stay motivated each day?
I would say just constant working on succeeding and trying new things. There's always ways to get better. So having that aspect and having that drive there really helps me out. I'd rather come in with a positive attitude and then get positivity back in return than come in with a negative attitude and then get negativity in return. So yes, there's a little bit of there, but I've always been told you get a lot more with a smile than you do with a frown. So
good point. Good point. And also, you seem like a person who would work hard, but also play hard. Do you like your vacations or your time off?
Oh, I do, drastically. I mean, that is my refresh, both mentally and physically. There's a reason that you get vacation time. You need that mental recharge, even if it's just staying at home and accomplishing things. I personally like to do a lot of camping and skiing and a lot of fishing and whatnot. So I'm always trying to be in the outdoors. So any opportunity I can get to be out there is just a dream come true.
That's excellent. That's good. And I think, too, if you can unplug and play hard, sometimes that helps you when you come back to work too.
Definitely. You get this new drive. I feel like every time I get a few extra days off or I get to take a long weekend, I just come back feeling so refreshed and just almost a new perspective on the week going forward. Just makes it so much fun.
Mm-hmm. You almost sound like a slogan that Princess Cruise Lines has. They have this slogan, "Come back new." And I've always thought about that. And that's kind of what you're saying too. You can come back a different person, come back new. So, well, as a young professional, a young leader, is there anything you would tell young people going into management, thinking about going into management?
I would say take that leap, but also be willing to adapt to it. I've definitely made a few mistakes coming in here, just not being fully aware and just on that learning stage. So just be willing to learn at any opportunity has been my best advice I could give.
So you say mistakes and you say learn. Are the two kind of,
They're definitely interconnected there.
Yes.
Nobody's going to get everything correct. So as long as you're learning from whatever you might have made that mistake on, you'll just better it for the next time.
You bet. That's great. Shawn, thanks for being on our show today and sharing your life so that we can think about how we can be bold. Appreciate it very much. It was
no problem, Dan. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And we thank our viewers. Check out the show notes of this podcast. This episode will be in our Level Up library very soon. Hey, Dustin, I know you'll have a few final words. Here are my parting words. Be bold.
If you feel like this information was valuable to you, Dan would love it if you'd click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, please leave a comment. Also, if you're a first-time subscriber, be sure to ring that bell to be notified about future episodes. To learn more about what Impact Training and Development can do for you and your business, visit impactbydan.com, where you can find more information about executive coaching, corporate training, keynote speaking, and much more. Thanks so much for watching.